Okay.
Dank Nechama. Unser Treffung heint. Was ist die Date heint?
24.
Der 24. Juni 2024. Und das ist unser Treffung, euch ich gedenk, 3026. Ich habe nicht kein Teus. Und wir wollen jetzt resümieren kurz das, was wir halten in Ton, in Mitten, der vergangenen Mal, haben wir angeheben lernen, ein sehr wichtigen Dokument, was Amy hat geschickt zu uns allen, ein Dokument auf Englisch, und Nechama kann uns dermonen dem Namen von Dokument und dem Namen von Mechaber.
Ein Minute. Der Mechaber ist Shalom Goldman.
Shalom Goldman,
Und
was
es
ist ein
heißt,
Professor in der Amerikaner Universität, ken?
I don't know, Middlebury.
Ken,
Middlebury, oh, College. Mich stimmen Amerikaner, ja.
okay.
Und es heißt, David Ben-Gurion asks 51 Jewish scholars, who is a Jew?
Okay. Und der Dokument vernimmt sich mit der Erklärung einer Sache, was ich habe nicht gewusst, und ich meine, als kiemat keiner hat nicht gewusst, weil auch der Artikel von Goldman ist gedruckt zum ersten Mal in welchem Jahr? 2019?
2018.
2018. Das heißt, das ist relativ ein neuer Artikel, wo es werden gebracht, Jedies, was wir haben wegen sie nicht gewusst, und sie seien wichtig, weil Goldman erklärt uns, als Ben-Gurion hat gefragt, wer ist ein Jid? 52 Rabbonim und Intellektuellen, nicht nur, weil hat gehabt einen theoretischen Interesse zu definieren, wer ist ein Jid, nur Goldman in seinem Artikel mit 6 Jahren zurück, der erklärt uns, als es ist voran am Mishpoche Inyen, was ist verbunden mit Ben-Gurion. Das heißt, Ben-Gurion hat sich gewendet zu 51 Intellektuellen und Rabbonim, nicht nur zu lieb theoretische Frage, wer ist ein Jid, nur weil in seiner Mishpoche hat existiert der Problem, weil sein Sohn Amos Ben-Gurion, hat Chassene gehabt mit der Goye in Ausland. Das heißt, die Frage, wer ist ein Jid, ist euch verbunden mit der Geschichte von der Mishpoche von Ben-Gurion. Und wegen dem habe ich nicht gewusst. Und wegen dem hat man bis 2018 nicht geschrieben. Das ist eine neue Idee, eine neue Information, wegen welcher man hat nicht gewusst, bis die letzten paar Jahre. Und ich muss sagen, als der Fakt, als Amos Ben-Gurion der Sohn von Ben Gurion hat Chassene gehabt mit einer nicht-jüdischen Frau, ist keinmal nicht der Mond geworden bichlal. Ich habe במשך Jahren gelernt wegen Ben Gurions Frage, wer ist ein Jid? Und ich habe gesucht wegen Amos Ben Gurion, wer ist, was tut. Und כמעט es existiert nicht keine Information wegen Amos Ben Gurion. Auf jeden Fall, ich weiß, die einzige Sache, was ich habe sich bewusst mit Jahren zurück, ist, als Amos Ben Gurion ist gewesen ein Angestellter in der Polizei, der Mishtara in Mדינת Israel. Aber trotzdem hat man wegen Amos Ben Gurion gar nicht geschrieben. Es kann sein, als die Siebe, zu welcher Amos Ben Gurion wird nicht der Mond bichlal, kiemat bichlal nicht, ist verbunden mit dem Fakt, was hat Chassene gehabt mit einer nicht-jüdischer Frau, weil das hat hereingeführt ein Problem in der Identität von Amos Ben Gurions Mishpoche, seine Kinder, sein Frau und so weiter. Okay.
Ich meine, dass Menschen haben gewusst, aber sie haben nicht geredet wegen dem. Das
Die
ist
Frage,
gewesen.
was ich will fragen, Nechaman ist, für was meint ihr, als Menschen haben gewusst? Sie hat ihre Information wegen dem?
Ich habe gesucht auf dem Internet und
Ja,
dem Rav in Amerika, he
ja,
was given a liberal, maybe reformed, Prinz, Prinz.
ja.
Hat gemacht dem, how do you say when somebody converts to Judaism? Was ist dem
Hat
Wort?
gemacht den Giur.
A Giur? Okay.
Aber die Frage ist, zu Tage die Frau von Amos Ben Gurion ist Megaya geworden.
Uh, es ist given Gift mit der Amerikaner Rav, Prinz, Prinz, und hat geschrieben eine Biografie wegen sich allein und hat geschrieben ein bisschen wegen dem Meise, wegen David Ben
Ja, aber
Gurion.
ich bin nicht sicher, als die Frau von Amos Ben Gurion ist geworden Megaya.
After es ist given, you mean in Yisrael mit der Fulmer Rav?
Wenn ihr sagt, Efscher, this is a guess.
No, I
Das
think
sind nicht keine Fakten.
she did convert. Aber es ist given in Gichen durch an Amerikaner Rav.
Durch Amerikaner Rav, was ist gewesen, was Efscher hat nicht gehabt, die Möglichkeit zu Megaier sein. Die Frage ist, zu der Rav Prinz hat gekannt, lo der Haloche Megaier sein, nicht betreuen.
Sie haben Chassene gehabt already. Sie haben Gechassene gehabt. Und noch dem
Ja, aber so
Chassene, ja.
Chassene haben nicht wie Jiden, nur mit der nicht-jüdischen Frau.
No, aber hat Chassene gehabt, sie hat gehabt, I don't know how to say it. They got married before David Ben Gurion's wife hat geteinet und noch
was against. כן.
und then hat gebeten Rav Prinz in Amerika und hat getan das in Gichen.
Was
Noch
heißt in Gichen?
like quickly because they already were married. So to come
Okay,
back to it,
it's a question if he had, from the point of the view of the halacha, the possibility to make a giur or not. I don't know about that. Okay.
Und David Ben Gurion's an Eniko, maybe Amos Zun hat echt Chasene gehabt mit Goye, aber sie hat nicht mit.
Sie ist nicht Begeier gewesen.
Can. Sie wohnen in Amerika. Yeah.
כן. אוקיי. בסיכום, in resumen, Ben Gurions Frage, wer ist Said, ist euch verbunden mit der Mishpoche-Indien und wegen dem habe ich nicht gewusst und das Sache haben euch nicht gewusst. Und viele in dem Buch, was ist erschienen auf Hebräisch wegen Ben Gurions Wendung zu Rabbonim und Intellektualen, ob ihr gedenkt, wird nicht der Mond der oder der Mishpoche Indien. Ist der Nechama mir im vergangenen Mal sein Gewinn in Mittellehnen dem Artikel von Goldman. Sie hat ihr gemacht, das Siemen, wo wir haben sich aufgestellt.
Nein, aber efter Vera gedenkt.
Vera, עשית סימן איפה עצרנו?
לא, אני הייתי ממש באותו יום, אני באתי לשיעור אחרי 7, והתחממתי בחום הזה, אז אני לא קלטתי פשוט.
אוקיי, נחמה תנסי למצוא במאמר באנגלית איפה עצרנו.
Okay, I see, because
Daniel.
Yeah, Ken. Okay, let me just count the paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4.
כן, נחמה.
5. Maybe we'll start with the 6th paragraph. Okay? From the top.
Which page?
Oh, it's on the computer. It's all one page. It's not numbered. Just the 6th paragraph.
Okay. הפרגרף השישי.
Okay, we were talking about David Ben Gurion's Vaid Paula. Sie hat gekauft kosher Fleisch in Mark, aber sie hat gemacht dem Fleisch treif in der Heim.
Bei ihr in Stub, ja.
Oh, okay, episode. Okay. Okay. The larger context of Ben Gurion's letter was the Israeli Law of Return, promulgated in 1950. Written in the wake of the Holocaust, the law was formulated to be as inclusive as possible. If refugees could show they were of Jewish ancestry, they would be admitted to the recently established state of Israel and granted citizenship.
Okay. Da wird gerät wegen dem Fakt, als in 1950, hat man in Medinas Israel geprüft, der Möglichkeit to possibilitate that most Jews who claim that they are Jews could enter as citizens the state of Israel. תמשיך.
Ja, wir haben gelernt im Paragraph, weil es ist geschrieben dem Sociologist Baruch Kimmerling. Ja,
בסדר, תמשיכי, לא אין טעם לחזור על זה, כן.
Okay. As Israeli sociologist Baruch Kimmerling has noted, This law was considered the true embodiment of Zionism, the creation of a Jewish nation state that would be a territory of asylum for any Jew in the world, whether persecuted or not.
Okay.
Okay. Yet this inclusivity, this broad definition of Jewish, meant that the law was bound to clash with the more restricted meaning of the term as understood by Israel's rabbinic authorities, all of whom were Orthodox Jews. Okay, so I guess David Ben-Gurion wanted it broad, right? Like open.
Right.
And the Frume wanted it very limited. Yeah.
Of course, because they have the halacha. Okay.
Thus, the law became a constant source of conflict. As Asher Cohen noted, from the founding of Israel onwards, the law of return was at the center of all debates about Jewish and Israeli identity.
יפה. אז גולדמן במאמר שלו שם את האצבע על הבעיה. בן גוריון היה מעוניין כמה שיותר אנשים שאומרים שהם יהודים ייכנסו למדינת ישראל, והרבנות שהלכה לפי ההלכה לא הייתה מוכנה להגדיר מיהו יהודי באופן רחב. ובגלל זה, אומר גולדמן, זה הפך לקונפליקט במדינת ישראל כל הזמן. זה רוצה להרחיב וזה רוצה לצמצם, and there is a problem, ויש בעיה. ולכן אנחנו יכולים להבין שבן גוריון רצה למצוא תשובה סופית מיהו יהודי כדי שהקונפליקט ייגמר, שיפסיקו לריב, ולכן הוא פונה לרבנים ולאינטלקטואלים בעולם כולו, ל-51 אנשים. ומה שחשוב בשבילנו הוא שמרדכי שטריגלר, כשהוא שמע וראה מה בן גוריון רוצה לעשות, שבן גוריון שואל אישים בארץ ובחוץ לארץ מיהו יהודי, מרדכי שטריגלר חשב שיש לו מה להגיד, ואף על פי שבן גוריון לא פנה אליו, שטריגלר כתב ב-1958, הפולק מתאפרגצל. ואני טוען, ואנחנו באמצע קריאת המאמר של שטריגלר, אני טוען שאנחנו נראה בהמשך שמה ששטריגלר אומר מעניין וחשוב ושונה ממה שרבנים או אינטלקטואלים בעולם ובארץ אומרים. נחמה, תמשיכי.
In his letter, Ben-Gurion reminded his interlocutors of the details of the law. After first stating that in Israel there is no discrimination on the basis of religion, he then went on to note, however, Jews alone enjoy a special extra privilege afforded by the law of return. Immediately upon arrival in Israel and after expressing a desire to settle here, they automatically and instantly become Israeli citizens.
אוקיי. יש לנו כאן, גולדמן מסביר, מקרה היסטורי מיוחד של העם היהודי. אמנם, that's true, של the state of Israel בנוי על בסיס דמוקרטי לכל אלה שגרים בתוכו, אם הם יהודים ואם הם לא יהודים. אבל, אומר גולדמן, ב-The Law of Return, כן? חוק השיבה אומר, ליהודים יש פריבילגיה מיוחדת שאין ללא יהודים במדינת ישראל. ולמה? מפני ש-The State of Israel זוהי מדינה יהודית ביסודה. The State of Israel was founded as a Jewish state. And even though every citizen living in the Israeli state has the same rights, even if he is not Jewish, however, Jews have a preeminence because the state was founded for the Jewish people. אחרי 2000 שנה ויותר, בן גוריון בחוק השיבה, The Law of Return מ-1950, הודיעו שפעם ראשונה אחרי 2000 שנה הולך לקום מדינה יהודית. ואז נולדת בעיה. מה עושים עם האנשים שהם לא יהודים, ובכל זאת הם חלק ממשפחות יהודיות? מה עושים עם אישה נוצרייה שהתחתנה עם יהודי ורוצה לגור במדינת ישראל? האם היא מקבלת אותם זכויות של יהודים? האם הילדים שלה יחשבו ליהודים? It's a real mess, זה באמת בעיה. ובגלל הבעיה הזאת, בן גוריון פונה ל-51 רבנים ואינטלקטואלים, ובגלל הפנייה של בן גוריון, מוטחה שטריגלר רוצה להגיד את דעתו. אל תשכחו שמוטחה שטריגלר יש לו, הוא רב, כן? ומוטחה שטריגלר יכול לדבר על מיהו יהודי גם כאינטלקטואל יהודי וגם כרב. ומוטחה שטריגלר מנצל את המעמד המיוחד שלו, ואף על פי שבן גוריון לא פנה אליו, הוא כותב את המאמר הגדול, הפולק מתפרג אצלנו. נחמה, ממשיכים לקרוא באנגלית את המאמר.
בכל זאת, סליחה, הבדל בין זה שלהיות יהודי ולהיות ישראלי.
מה דניאל אומר? אמרת בכל זאת מה?
בכל זאת הבדל הוא דומה ומשנה, אבל בין זה שההגדרה, מה זה להיות ישראלי, מה שהוא להיות יהודי, שזה לפעמים הולך ביחד, לא.
לא, הבעיה היא יותר פשוטה. להיות ישראלי זוהי אזרחות במדינה להיות יהודי זוהי מהות אינטלקטואלית היסטורית. זה שני דברים שונים.
כן, אני מסכים, אבל...
רגע, תן לי לגמור. להיות ישראלי, אתה יכול להיות ערבי ולהיות ישראלי. אבל להיות יהודי צריך הגדרה יותר מסובכת ויותר מלאה. זה לא אותו דבר להיות ישראלי ולהיות יהודי. אתה יכול להיות יהודי ישראלי ואתה יכול להיות ישראלי לא יהודי. אין כאן התנגשות, כי להיות ישראלי זו אזרחות. להיות יהודי זוהי מהות לאומית. נחמה תמשיך.
Ja, ich habe eine Frage. Was seien die speziell mehr Privilegies, was Jeden in Israel bekommen und nicht die nicht jiddische Einwohner in Israel?
נחמה, ich habe nicht verstanden die Frage.
Es ist geschrieben, however, Jews alone enjoy a special extra privilege afforded by the law of return.
The law of return. The privilege is that if you are a Jew, you can become automatically a citizen of the state of Israel.
Oh, I see. That's the extra privilege.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. But if you are an Arab or a Druze, you don't become automatically a member of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
עכשיו, מי שלבני משפחה של יהודים בישראל, ואם יש בן משפחה שלא יהודי, אז ילדים שם לא יכולים להתחתן בישראל, כי אין לנו, איך זה, אינסטיטוט של חתונות ממשלתי. יש מתחתנים רק דרך רבנות.
הרבנות.
כן.
וגם בית קברות. ליהודים יש בית קברות נפרד, רק ליהודים. אבל לגבי בתי קברות, אני יודעת שבמדינות, בואי נגיד קתוליות, שם אותו דבר. יש בתי קברות לקתולים, ולדתות אחרות זה משהו בנפרד.
כן. דניאל רצה להגיד משהו?
לא, מסכים לדעה.
אוקיי, נחמה תמשיך.
Okay, just a minute. I don't know where we are now. Okay, this however clause seemed to some observers to refute the contention that there is no discrimination in Israel. Israel afforded no such privileges to those Arabs who had remained in the state of Israel after the 1948 war, nor did it permit Arabs who had fled or been exiled during that war to return. But Ben-Gurion and his respondents did not address this issue. By common consensus, they seem to agree that the law of return was not discriminatory. Israel was a Jewish state, and one's Jewishness determined whether one would be accepted as a citizen. Yeah, so he's saying the law of return was only for the Yidden.
Of course.
Nor for Dean.
Okay. Why is it called the law of return? Because Jews return to the ancestral land. Arabs don't return to the state, to the earth of Israel. The return is of the Jewish people after they dwelled in the land of Israel many, many centuries ago. So the return is the return of Jews to their ancestral land. תמשיכי.
Toward the end of his letter, Ben-Gurion revealed his own vision of Israeli Jewish identity. In Israel, efforts must be made to increase shared and unifying properties and eliminate as far as possible those that separate and divide. Ben-Gurion went on to contrast the diaspora, where marriages with non-Jews were considered a threat to Jewish community and the state of Israel, where these marriages could lead to the assimilation of non-Jews into the Jewish people, particularly in families in which the children of mixed marriages have immigrated to Israel. Yeah, I think we read this, but I found that very interesting. That intermarriage in Israel and intermarriage in the diaspora is different, because in Israel, there's an integration, assimilation process that eventually they and their children and grandchildren will become Jewish just by nature of becoming Israeli. Is that
כן.
right?
זה יכול להיות נכון, נחמה, but only to a point. Because during the years when the state of Israel becomes more and more non-Jewish, more and more secular, more and more alienated from the Jewish sources, the same process of assimilation can occur in the state of Israel, in my opinion.
Aber die Kinder und die Ehepaare können Chassene haben mit Jiden, as it's like a natural way of eventually, assimilating and becoming one. Like there's no difference, because the children and the grandchildren marry. Like, for instance, David Ben-Gurion's son, right? Who married okay. Yeah. So sie haben gehabt Kinder, right?
Okay.
Und seine Kinder, ob sie haben gehabt mit Jiden, as in die kommende Jahre, sie seien geworden Jiden, und keine Frage ist nicht, keiner fragt nicht, keine Frage ist.
Yeah, das ist אפשר אמס, aber the temperature of their Jewishness is less and less from one generation to another. And at the end, there is nothing who makes them Jewish from an inner point of view. To be a Jew, in my opinion, and in the opinion we will see also of Striegler, is to be active with principles of Jewishness which you practice. You cannot be, after a couple of generations, a Jew by inertia. The active aspect of Jewish identity will die after some generation if there will not be an active practice of your Jewishness. I guess that Striegler will say that, and I am saying that, and Nechama go on.
I think it's easier to assimilate in Israel within a mixed marriage in the Hoffnung von die kommende Dores than in the diaspora. That's what I think.
Sagt noch einmal was.
Es is easier, es ist leichter zu assimilieren und seinen geworden Kedei Jiden, Kimat Jiden, Viazoi Jiden, mit die kommende Doris. Es ist leichter in Israel wie in Diaspora, in Golis.
Es ist leichter zu was? Zu assimilieren sich?
Yeah, and to become in the future generations, that the future generations just become Israeli, Jewish, because if they marry,
No, if you say Israeli Jewish, that's not the same thing. You have to choose or Israeli or Jewish.
I mixed up now. I thought I knew what I was trying to say. I just think it's easier in Israel for a mixed marriage. I think it's more bright. The future is more to keep the Judaism in a mixed marriage in the future than in America, because here in America, once you marry a non-Jew, they celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas.
In America, it goes more rapidly, the assimilation. But I contain that in Israel, the assimilation exists, the path is slower. Because as I said before, Jewish identity is an active way of keeping your consciousness as a Jew. There is no automatic Jewishness. To be a Jew is to be active intellectually and practically.
איך מודדים את זה, לפי ההגדרה שלך?
איך מודדים את זה? זוהי שאלה טובה, ואני חושב שהתשובה נמצאת אצל שטריגלר כשנמשיך לקרוא. אז קצת סבלנות, אצל שטריגלר אנחנו נמצא איך מודדים את זה.
Ich habe gesehen einen Film, einen israelischen Film, Episode Go and You Will Become. Es ist wegen Jingele von Äthiopien und ist nicht gewesen Yid in Äthiopien und seine Mutter, seine Mama hat ihn geschickt in eine Schule, כדי zu fahren kein Yisrael, ja, mit den anderen Ethiopian Jews, ja. Und ist gestanden in Schule mit der Frau und die Mama hat die Frau gebeten, zu gehen fahren in Israel. Und die Frau wird sein, das Jingles Mama, ja, oder was, ja. Und ist rein in Israel, ist gefahren und he was with an Israeli family. Und die Mama, was hat ihn adoptiert, hat gesagt, via like a future, be and you will become. Zu sein und du wirst werden. So to be, first to be in Israel and du wirst werden, yeah.
כן, אוקיי, וסברנה ישראלי או היית?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever
תמשיכי.
but I don't know if there's okay, it doesn't matter.
אוקיי. תמשיכי, נחמה.
You know, I've heard Israelis say, I'm Israeli. Of course I'm a Jew. Like I've heard, you know, just by being Israeli, you know, they're automatically Jewish. Yeah. Okay.
That's not so. To be Israeli and to be Jewish are two different categories, and I am trying to explain that. To be Israeli is to be a citizen of a state from a formal point of view. To be a Jew is a different thing.
But I think here in North America,
yeah,
you know, the kids die Kindergehen in shul in a Yiddish, like the parents, you know, spend a lot of money to give them a Jewish education. But in Israel, it's just part of their life. Like they don't have, like, so yeah.
That's true.
So, okay. Okay, thus, in Ben-Gurion's view, intermarriage was a positive move for Israelis. Implicit in Ben-Gurion's argument is the secular Zionist view that the function of Jewish law had been to preserve Jewish national identity in the 2 millennia of exile. Now that the exile had ended and the national home had been reborn, the law was no longer necessary.
Okay, so מה שגולדמן אומר, זה לא בדיוק נכון. The exile didn't end. First of all, because the galut existed. And second, because you can live in exile also when you are in the state of Israel. The question is, how do you live as a Jew from a practical and active point of view? You can live in exile also in the state of Israel. It's not a question of automatically ending the exile because there is no end. What is exile? Exile means to live outside of your Jewish identity, either in the Galut or even in the state of Israel. When I said about my relative, which she says, what do I care about Jewishness or Judaism? I am a member of the world, and she's living in the state of Israel. She, in my opinion, is living in a kind of exile, even though she lives in the state of Israel.
Well, let's talk about that, because I've heard from people like I'm in my other groups where we read, and they always look at stories from a humanistic international point of view, and I'm always looking at the Jewish essence, which it can be extrapolated, you know, into the other, right? Into the other, but I start with the Jewish. But they always speak about the world, about, you know, all humanity. So what's the right way of looking at things from a like
your question, what is the right way to look at those stories you are reading in the other group? There is no right way. If you read a story where the Jewishness of the characters gets blurred and non-significant because the humanitarian aspect is the most important in the story, that's okay. But then the Jewish character, the Jewish aspect of the story gets blurred and becomes nothing. As I said before, you cannot be a Jew automatically. If you have a Jewish identity, it is because you are activating your Jewish identity, because you are committing yourself to some values which are special values for the Jewish nation. And the question is, if there are special values for the Jewish nation today, or everything is humanitarian. And I say, and I guess that Striegler will say it when we will continue reading, that there is a special way of being Jewish which is different from other ways of being human. In other words, what Striegler would say is that the Jewish nation has a reason to exist as a separate entity which has a purpose and a way of looking at life and at humanity which does not exist with such a power in other cultures. And if I am right, we will see it when we continue reading Striegler. But now we want to finish reading Goldman.
Okay. Now that the exile has ended and the national home had been reborn, the law was no longer necessary. Thus, the law forbidding marriage between Jews and non-Jews was no longer relevant. In fact,
so what Goldman is trying to say, what is the view of Ben Gurion? This is not the opinion of Goldman, I guess, but he's trying to explain how the secular Ben Gurion puts away any question of halacha. Tamshich.
In fact, it could be an impediment to Jewish national rebirth. For Ben Gurion's Orthodox Jewish opponents, however, this view was heresy. Historical circumstances, including the establishment of a Jewish state, could not alter the divine covenant and its expression in rabbinic law. Can I go on? It's another paragraph. Okay. Who were these 51 intellectuals? To start with, they were all men. A fact that is striking by today's standards of gender equality, particularly as the issue at hand concerned the status of the child's mother. 20 of the scholars lived in Israel, 31 in Europe and the United States. They seem to have been chosen by category. 1/3 were Orthodox rabbis, 1/3 were Jewish scholars affiliated with the more liberal trends in Judaism, and 1/3 were secularists, among them literary and other cultural figures. 46 of the 51 answered the letter. The majority of the responses to Ben Gurion were brief and to the point. The most extensive and detailed letters were from Chaim Cohen, the legal advisor.
Cohen. In Hebrew, we say Chaim Cohen, who was a lawyer. Ken.
The legal advisor to Ben Gurion's government, and Shlomo Goren, military chaplain and later chief rabbi of the Israel Defense Forces and chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Israel. Okay. Ben-Gurion's decision to seek responses from scholars who lived outside of Israel presented the question of Jewish identity as one of general Jewish interest, not solely an Israeli concern. Okay. Ben-Gurion, Amy is da. Shalom, Amy.
Shalom, Amy. Amy, by the way, the article you sent to us is a very interesting, important, and important addition to the topic we are tackling lately. And Nechama is reading now the article.
Shalom, Amy. I think she's trying to connect. Ich sehe ihr Bild mit ihr Ketzele, but okay.
Amy שומעת אותנו? נחמה, Amy שומעת אותנו?
Look, I see her picture, but I don't think she's
she's trying to reach us.
Oh, she said that she can hear. I can hear. So maybe she can't speak today. Maybe she can't speak, but she can hear. Okay.
Okay, Amy, what I am saying is that the article of Goldman you sent us is a very important document and we are reading it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben-Gurion read these varied and fascinating letters, but in the end, these scholars learned formulations had little effect on public policy. The Israeli government found a political solution to the 1958 parliamentary crisis that involved the realignment of the parties in the ruling coalition without addressing the core question of who is a Jew. So Ben-Gurion came to a political solution rather than addressing his question of who is a Jew?
Ben-Gurion received answers, but they were not incumbent to the solution of the parliamentary crisis. Okay.
The responses to Ben-Gurion's letter were first published in New York in 1965 under the editorship of Professor Sidney Honig of Yeshiva University. In addition to the letters, that volume included essays by Orthodox Jewish scholars affiliated with the Rabbinical Council of America. The book, with the title Jewish Identity, Who is a Jew, was published in a second edition in 2013. In both editions, the tone of the presentation is quite clear and somewhat polemical. The editors, wishing to buttress the case for the Orthodox definition of Jewish identity, point out that of the 46 opinions received by Ben-Gurion, 38 called for following Jewish law regarding the registration of children, namely following the mother's religion. In 2002, Israeli sociologist Eliezer ben Raphael published these letters in a less polemical and more scholarly edition under the title Jewish Identities, 50 Intellectuals Answer Ben-Gurion.
Okay, מה שאני רוצה להגיד, זה the 3 editions of the answers in the letters, the 3 editions keep compartmentalization, a different approach by different groups of respondents. And what we will see with Strigler, when we will continue reading, is that Strigler tried to find a unified answer to who is a Jew in order to go over the differences between the Orthodox rabbis and the more liberal intellectuals. What Striegler did was to try to reach a unified answer who is a Jew, which will annulate the characteristics of halachic or non-halachic approaches. What Striegler will do when we will read more, he tried to get to the quintessence of there is a Yid. Over all the differences between halachic and non-halachic approaches. So if I am correct, Striegler did with this article a kind of Hercules job. He went over the differences of the 51 respondents. He found, in my opinion, the common denominator for all the answers who wrote to Ben-Gurion. And because of that, if I am correct, Striegler found an answer to who is a Jew, which is higher in value and higher from an intellectual point of view in order to characterize who is a Jew. In other words, as we will see when we will read more Striegler, Striegler says a Jew is more than the halachic approach. A Jew is more than the non-halachic approach. A Jew, his identity is beyond what we knew until today. Until today, rabbis said a Jew is a result of an halachic approach. Secular intellectuals say the Jew is a kind of an identity approaching Jewishness from a liberal point of view. I, Striegler, say to be a Jew is more than to be a Jew from a halachic point of view or to be a Jew from a secular point of view. So what is it to be a Jew in Striegler's view? For that, we have to read more because we are only in the first third of the analysis by Mordechai Striegler, and we have to go on seeing what he says more. So let's go back to Striegler.
Oh, you don't want to continue this? We're halfway through.
How much is left
Let
from
me
the
see.
Goldman
1, 2,
article?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Nechama.
Nine more paragraphs.
So let's finish the paragraphs, and then we'll go to Strigler. Okay.
The wide variety of opinions that we find in these letters demonstrates the difficulty, or might we say futility, of attempting to define the term Jew. As one might expect, the scholars' responses fall into 3 broad categories that mirror the categories of Ben-Gurion's choice of respondents. For Orthodox Jews, the definition of a Jew was simple, precise, direct, and specific. A Jew was either a child born to a Jewish mother or a person who converted to Judaism under the direction of an Orthodox rabbi.
Okay.
This standard was immutable, with no exceptions possible. As one rabbi noted, answering the question, who is a Jew, did not require great erudition.
Okay. What I want to say that this definition, from an halachic point of view, is somewhat a definition, a mechanical definition. It's not a definition, it's a definition of procedure. It's not a definition of content and involvement of the person itself. And because of that, in my opinion, it's not enough.
I think it also depends on which Orthodox rabbi did the conversion, because
No, it doesn't matter. We are speaking in general, the Orthodox approach. Okay.
The eminent Talmudist Rabbi Aaron Kotler, founder of the Lakewood Yeshiva, opened his letter to Ben-Gurion in this way. I am amazed at the fact that a question considering the purity and integrity of the Jewish people, whose preservation is the basis of our existence, should be posed as if it required some other solution or opinion from me. The question has a simple and explicit answer in the Holy Torah. It is clear that a Jew is only someone who is a Jew according to the law of the Torah. Rabbi Kotler goes on to explain what the law is. Only through birth or conversion is one a Jew. Another Orthodox Talmudist scholar, Rabbi Yechiel Weinberg, wrote to Ben-Gurion, this is a new question unimagined by preceding generations. A simple Jew without philosophical predilections or newfound ideologies would shrug his shoulders at this odd question that has arisen in the very generation of natural rebirth and the return to our spiritual homeland. Rabbi Weinberg's comment about newfound ideologies was in fact a veiled reference to secular Zionism. He, however, was clearly not against Zionism in all of its forms, as some rabbis of the time were. The reference to national rebirth indicates his allegiance to religious as opposed to secular Zionist ideas. So he was a religious Zionist.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Is that like the settlers now? Religious Zionists like the settlers?
No, this is a little bit different. We will not enter into that.
Okay.
Okay, hala.
Yet for Ben-Gurion and the other secularists in the Zionist leadership, Jewishness was national rather than religious. Jewishness trumped Judaism. Oh, and Israeliness redefined Judaism. Perhaps the most explicitly secular response to Ben-Gurion's letter was that of Chaim Kahn, who had co-authored the Law of Return. Some years earlier, Kahn wrote to the Prime Minister, "There is no better way for the state to act than to indicate the religion and nationality of the child as defined by the declaration of the parents. For this legal scholar, a child's parents, not state religious authorities, were the true arbiters of identity. I think we read this last time. Kahn asserted that for the purpose of immigration and citizenship, the child follows his parents. Aware that rabbinic law would not accept the child of a non-Jewish woman as a Jew, Kahn argued that the meaning of Jew in Knesset legislation is not identical to its meaning in religious law. Orthodox Jewish scholars were bound to disagree with Kahn on this issue. The issue of Jewish-Arab relations within Israel and the status of its... Do you want me to read this? Because I think we read it last time. Okay, but I'll reread it. The issue of Jewish-Arab relations within Israel and the status of its Arab citizens did not arise in these extensive and learned deliberations, an oversight perhaps even more surprising than the lack of gender diversity among the co-respondents. One respondent who did address the question of Israeli Arab rights was Akiva Ernst Simon, a professor at the Hebrew University and a student and colleague of the philosopher Martin Buber.
Yeah, we spoke about him. Okay.
Okay,
Absolutely.
you want me to just go to the next paragraph?
No, תמשיך.
Okay. Ben-Gurion's contention that every Israeli citizen must be identified both by religion and nationality struck Simon as injurious to democratic life in Israel. Citing the absence of ethnic and religious designations in a United States passport, an absence which he considered a conspicuous hallmark of active democracy, Simon argued that the Arab citizens of Israel are entitled to rest assured that the government of Israel is doing all it can to prevent an official document from serving as a potential instrument of discrimination. Professor Simon's warning about the consequences of discrimination against Israel's Arab citizens went unheeded. Okay, among the American respondents to Ben-Gurion's letter was Alexander Altman, professor of philosophy at Brandeis University. Though ordained as an Orthodox rabbi, Altman responded as a university professor. He was more philosophical and pragmatic in his response than many of the Orthodox rabbis on Ben-Gurion's roster. Altman framed the issues underlying the status of children of a mixed marriage problem astutely, even prophetically, noting that presumably in these cases, the parents do not wish their children to undergo a rite of conversion. The parents themselves are not observant and see no need for their child to be accepted as a convert, as they are satisfied with his being Jewish solely in the national sense of the term. In effect, the question is there a category of Jews whose Judaism is limited to national affiliation alone?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting because nationality as a part of the definition of being Jewish without any other aspect of content of the culture. This is perhaps what is happening today. Okay.
After a long and thoughtful consideration of this national affiliation question, Altman decided against it. A purely national identity for Jews was for him untenable. The whole of the national effort of the Jewish people stems from unity between religious faith and the desire to ensure the survival of the nation. It is clear, therefore, that there can be no recognition of Jewish nationality as separate from religion.
As separate from?
From religion.
Okay. That's Very interesting. Okay.
Despite this conclusion, which seemed to place the definition of Jewishness in the hands of the Orthodox rabbis, Altman called for a conversion policy that was flexible and compassionate. He hoped that at the crossroads at which we find ourselves at this time, when the different diasporas are coming together in Israel, the rabbis will approach the issue of converts charitably and will ease the acceptance into Judaism of those children whose parents have arrived in Israel as a place of refuge and freedom. I pray that the rabbis in the state of Israel will do everything in their power to further the full integration of these children. I don't think they do. Do you? They don't
מה
do
את
everything.
אומרת, נחמה?
Sie seien streng, the Orthodox rabbis in Israel. I don't think they've made it easier for them to integrate. I think they made it more difficult.
That's right. Okay.
From within the list of Israeli respondents to the letter, a similar plea for a more tolerant and less exclusive standard for Jewishness was expressed by the then highly esteemed novelist Chaim Hazaz. Hazaz?
Chaim Azaz is a literary writer, a Hebrew writer. Okay.
His reply to Ben-Gurion's question expressed a decidedly secularist view of Israeli statehood. The Jewish community in Israel, Hazaz wrote, triumphed over its enemies and established a state. It was established as a secular state in which religion has no ruling power, but is an option available to the individual if he so wishes. It therefore appears to me that halakha has no power over the population registry. Hence, if the father and the non-Jewish mother wish to have their son circumcised in order to be registered as a Jew, they should be accepted. For there is no greater virtue than a mother who gives her most prized possession, her son, to a nation that is not hers. Chazaz's and Altman's advice fell on deaf ears. Over the subsequent decades, the Israeli rabbinate has become even stricter in policing the borders of Judaism in the name of the state. The Palestinian suicide bombings in Jerusalem of the mid-1990s resulted in one of the most dramatic expressions of the conflict over Jewish identity. Among the many victims of the bombings were Russian immigrants to Israel who fell into that category of people who had the rights of Israeli Jews, but were not Jews according to the rabbis. Okay. Thus, they could not be buried with full rights in a Jewish cemetery. Secular Israelis who saw the victims of the bombings as Israelis who had given their lives for the Jewish state were outraged by the refusal to bury them as Jews. But many Orthodox Jews defended the rabbinate's decision. Okay, there's just one more paragraph and then it's finished. Decades earlier, in 1965, Hebrew University professor Jacob Talmon, one of Israel's leading intellectuals, suggested that the Jewish religion may paradoxically be facing its supreme test precisely in the Jewish state, and the problem of Jewish identity may prove even more intractable there than in the countries of dispersion. In the second decade of the 21st century, both Jewish identity and Israeli identity continued to resist precise definition, and Talmon's observation seems more astute than ever today. Today, in modern Israel's 70th year, the definitions of Jewish and Israeli identity remain fluid and imprecise, and this lack of definition ensures that Ben-Gurion's question will return continuously to the public arena, not only in Israel, but wherever Jews reside.
זה הסוף?
כן, כן.
אוקיי.
What-
מה
what-
שעכשיו אנחנו נעשה, קראנו את המאמר של גולדמן, שמנתח, he analyzes, התשובות לבן גוריון. אני טוען, I am arguing, that the article of Striegler we will read in continuation is a very interesting and innovative way of dealing with the problem of Jewish identity. Striegler is trying to go around all the difficulties we heard about in the article of Goldman. Striegler will offer us in his article a novel and different way of defining Jewish identity. Not from the point of view of the halacha, not from the point of view of secular Jewishness, but from an, I would say, an unexpected viewpoint, which we will see immediately when we go on reading Striegler's article. And I think that after we read Goldman's article, Striegler will appear to us as a very interesting, novel, and original way of defining what is Jewish identity and who is a Jew. So let's go on and continue reading Striegler.
Okay, I have to find it. Maybe once I find it, somebody else can read.
כן.
But wait, I
קודם
have to
כל,
find
תנסי למצוא נחמה את המקום
Striegler.
שבו עצרנו את המאמר של שטריגלר. אני רוצה להגיד שאני חושב שכאשר שטריגלר כתב הפולק mit der Fragezeichen, הוא לא קרא ולא הכיר את התשובות לבן גוריון של האחרים, ובכל זאת, כשהוא מסביר וריזאית, הוא מדבר בצורה אוריגינלית וחשובה, ושונה מכל התשובות שעליהן שמענו עכשיו. נחמה, מצאת את המקום?
I'm having trouble sharing the Striegler. Wait, let me try.
דרה יכולה לעזור? דרה, את יכולה למצוא את המקום?
אני אשתדל.
כן, תשתדלי. יש לנו עוד 9 דקות. אין ספק, כמו שראינו אצל גולדמן, התשובות של האנשים שענו לבן גוריון היו תשובות קצרות and to the point. שטריגלר עונה תשובה ארוכה מאוד, שהיא למעשה אסאי על הבעיה כולה. שטריגלר לקח ברצינות את הדיון בשאלה. נחמה, מה אמרת?
wenn hat Yisrael hat angeheuben zu allein die frome Parteien in der Knesset. David Ben-Gurion hat das getan in 1900.
Was ist die Frage? Ich verstehe.
Like in der Memshala.
Say it in English.
In the Israeli government,
yeah.
Who and when and what year was there an amalgamation with the secular Memshala und die fromme Parteien?
Okay, there were, since the state of Israel was founded, there were different ways of representing different currents in the Israeli society with secular groups, secular parties and non-secular parties. It's a whole history which changed all the time.
But is that from David Ben-Gurion, 1958, was Shalom, der Schreiber hat geschrieben, something happened in 1958.
No, what happened in 1958 was the question of Ben-Gurion, who is a Jew. He had to define legally who is a Jew. But the parties, the different parties in the Knesset from the beginning of the State of Israel played their role in different combinations.
Yeah, because I think the religious parties, which are only exclusively religious parties, who only look after the religious parties, is I think that in a democratic, I don't know, I have a problem with that because
what don't you know?
Because they only look after their own concerns in their religious Jewish community. and you know, the way I understand Netanyahu, like for an example, you know, forms these different, you know, connections with these different religious parties, it's a problem because it makes for a country that is partially.
What is the problem, Nechama? What is the problem?
I'm wondering why in Israel there are political parties that are religious parties that have an influence on I guess the political I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but maybe somebody can help me.
I would say very simply, political parties, religious parties, non-religious parties, all of them were part of the political play in the Knesset. There is nothing different here.
Right.
Every party has its own interests. It was represented in the Knesset. There is nothing strange in that.
No, but in Israel, it's also religious based. It's the religious parties are obviously part of the democratic rule and government, and
So
I'm
what's the
just,
problem?
it's different than in Canada or in United States. It's different.
It's different only from the point of view that the religious aspect and the halachic aspect of part of the population who was part of the religious voters, they sent to the Knesset their representatives.
But I think that state and religion should be separate, bazunder.
You may think what you want, but in the state of Israel, the religious parties were part of the political play. This is a fact. אוקיי, אני חושב שאנחנו לא הצלחנו לחזור עדיין לשטריגלר. אם יש שאלה או קומנט עכשיו, אם לא, אנחנו בפעם הבאה מתחילים ישר לקרוא את שטריגלר, ואני מבקש שתנסו למצוא את המקום שבו הפסק.
Okay, can I stop the recording?
Yes, and
Okay.